Hello, this is Kenny Williamson, and welcome back to another episode of Melchizedek Chronicles. It's that time of year again, and it's almost Christmas, so I thought I'd just do a little Christmas special here as far as throwing in some nice Christmas music, that is. Other than that, I don't know. Well, it's kind of an uplifting one. I'm going to talk just a little bit about possibly the rapture, and when that could be. When do you think the rapture could be? Well, I have some interesting information here that we're going to pull out of Matthew chapter 24, and it will give us a little bit of evidence, possibly, not exactly, but it's got some interesting stuff in it. So I was going to go through some of Matthew 24, and what I was going to do is kind of go through Matthew 24 and go over verse by verse in a commentary type format and kind of give you some very interesting information that I think you're going to think about. The information I'm going to talk about is going to get you thinking. And then once you get to thinking about it, you can do a little more research and see what you think for yourself. But I think you're going to find it interesting, and there's some pretty good stuff in there. So now, one of the very first things we're going to start off with is obviously verse 1, Matthew 24, verse 1. And this is talking about Jesus here. Jesus is foretelling the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, okay? And it says, "And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple." Okay, verse 2, "And Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down." Okay, that seems pretty simple, right? But let me tell you a problem here. Now, this is not with this verse, but it's a problem with what's going on over there in Israel right now, in Jerusalem. And if you know anything about it, you know that the Jews are over there supposedly at the Temple Mount, and they are going up to that big wall that they walk up to and pray and kiss and all that stuff. It's called the Wailing Wall. Now, the Wailing Wall obviously has been there since who knows when, and the Jews say that that is part of the temple. That's one of the temple walls, and they're calling that the Wailing Wall. Well, if that's true, if that is the Wailing Wall, and it's part of the temple and it's still standing, that would mean that Jesus right here is a liar, wouldn't it? Because Jesus said there will not be one stone left upon another that's thrown down, that's not thrown down. But yet we have a huge wall, the side of a giant building. So the Jews are over there right now worshiping up against that wall. And if you were to tell a Jew, something about Jesus, they would probably go to this verse and they would say, well, Jesus is clearly a liar. Say, why is that? Well, he said that the temple's going to be thrown down, but here it is and we're worshiping at it. So he didn't know what he's talking about. In actuality, there have been scientists come out now, and they've already figured out that there was a fort there built by the Romans. Okay, and this fortress is called the Fort Antonia. And this fortress was huge. And basically, what they have figured out, now a lot of people don't want to hear it. Okay, they don't want to hear this. That wall is actually remnants of the temple that Rome built there. So that Dome of the Rock and everything is not on the Temple Mount. It is merely on the foundation of an old Roman fortress. Come to find out, they have proof now that the actual temple was built in the old city of David. So the actual temple is gone because obviously, just like Jesus said, there's not one stone left upon another, not even one. And they have had people look into this, and you can do a Google search on this. So, you can look at it. They've got the dimensions. They've figured everything out. But the moral of the story is that temple was built in the city of David, and it's nothing more than a grassy field there now, and you would never know that a building had ever existed there. And that is exactly what Jesus said here. So what Jesus said is 100% true. So there is no way that these Jews are praying on the temple, on a piece of the temple wall that's still standing, because Jesus said it wouldn't be there. So it's not there. So that's one of the very first things here in Matthew 24 that I think is very interesting, that if you don't look into this here and you talk to a Jew, he would say that Jesus is a liar because of what Jesus prophesied here. But we know that it's true, and, you just have to go a little further. Now let's move on to Matthew 24:3. It says, and he's talking here about the signs of the end of the age. Okay, now the end of the age here is right before we go into the millennium. So this would be right after Jacob's trouble, which some people call the 7-year tribulation. Now, technically in the Bible, it's called Jacob's trouble. Okay, Jacob is another word for Israel. So this 7-year tribulation is actually 7 years of Jacob's trouble, or Israel's trouble. The whole point of the 7 years of Jacob's trouble is to get Israel to come back to God. So you need to understand that right there. Okay, so 24:3, it says, and he sat upon the Mount of Olives, and the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming at the end of the world? Now, this coming they're talking about here is not the rapture. This coming is the second coming, and that's why it says the end of the world, because it will be the end of the world as we know it, okay? Because it will be the end of everything you know now. It will be Armageddon, and then going into the 1,000-year millennium. So that, and in the 1,000-year millennium, when you read up on that, that's when, people live forever. You've got a tree of life there. People will be giving birth. They'll be having babies. That's when the tigers are laying with the lambs, the lions and the lambs, and a child, can lead them around. So we can talk about that later, but that's that 1,000-year millennium. Okay? So now, verse 4, and Jesus answered and said unto them, take heed that no man deceive you. So right there we know that during this time period, of Jacob's trouble, which some people refer to as a 7-year tribulation, but technically it's Jacob's trouble, we are going to have people trying to trick you if you're in that time. Now, if you're a Christian, you should be raptured out, and you will never make it to that time. You're never going to see it. So if you're saved now, this doesn't apply to you. You won't be there. Okay? So, but if you're a Jew and you don't believe Christ has already came, or you're a unsaved person, you may see this. Okay? So Jesus says, take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying that I'm Christ, and shall deceive many. So during these 7 years, you're going to have people popping up saying, I'm Christ and I'm here. Now, if you're uneducated and you are oblivious to the Bible, which chances are if you're here during that time period, that's probably the case, okay? Unfortunately, that's the case. Then you're not going to realize that Christ is not coming back for those 7 years. Once we start into Jacob's trouble, it is 7 years long, and it ends with Christ coming down from the sky. Okay, so there's going to be no mistake. But if you don't know that, you could easily be fooled, I'm sure. So, he says, And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you not be troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So in other words, during this 7 years, you're going to hear of war. I mean, there's always going to be fighting, just like there is now. There's going to be wars and rumors of wars. So sure, during that 7 years, you're going to have all kinds of fighting. And, it could be Russia, could be whoever. We've got wars and rumors of wars right now. So of course you're going to have it during that time as well, especially because the Christians are going to leave. So once those Christians are gone, basically you're going to have all hell break loose anyway. So of course you're going to have wars. But it's not the end yet. And he goes on to say, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there'll be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. So we're seeing that right now. So it's ramping up. So that's not a surprise, is it? We have that stuff right now. There was an earthquake I heard on the news just the other day that killed a bunch of people. So there's constantly earthquakes. There's always been famines. And our own government, is trying to stop us from eating meat and trying, what's his face over there? He's wanting to block the sun. And it's just unbelievable. So they're going to cause famines themselves if, they're trying to. But during this time, God is going to cause them. Because everything that happens during this 7-year tribulation is the wrath of God being poured out. And the whole purpose of this is to punish the Jews and force them to realize that Christ did come back and they missed it, and then them to turn back to Christ so he can come in and, take over and put in the millennium kingdom. So, verse 7. No, I was already verse 7. So verse 8. And all these things are the beginning of sorrows. Okay? So yes, it's the beginning of, during that 7 years, there's horrible stuff happening. And that's, in the middle of the 7 years is whenever the abomination of desolation sets up and you have to take the mark of the beast. So there's lots of stuff happening in this 7 years. Okay? And it says, and they shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Okay? So, if you enter in to Jacob's trouble, and you realize what's going on, and at that point you're like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? So now you get saved. Now you accept Jesus Christ. Well, when you accept Jesus Christ during those 7 years, you will be hated. They're going to want you dead. They're not going to want any part of it. Now, during that 7 years is when all this New World Order, one world religion, all that stuff is going to come into play, and you can't do anything about it. So let's move on to Matthew 24:10, and it says, and then shall many be offended, and they shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. So we see that now. But as soon as the Holy Spirit leaves with all the Christians, you're going to have all kinds of people hating one another, killing, whole 9 yards. Okay, verse 11, and many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. So we've already got tons of false prophets. Just click on to TikTok, and you've got all kinds of people. Most of them are dressed up like clowns, in my opinion. They look like circus clowns. They got their hair dyed. I saw this one lady, she's got her hair dyed purple, and it's all weird looking, and got some big staff in her hand that looks like some kind of driftwood, and just, you need to tune in because she's got a prophecy. She's going to tell you something. See, she's a prophet. Okay. Number one, the prophecy has already been written out. It's in the Holy Bible. It's in the King James Bible. So if you want to know what's going to happen, just flip it open. Okay, nothing is being added to or taken away from that. So nobody is going to tell you anything that hasn't already been written down in the Bible. If it's not in the Bible, it's not true. So these so-called prophets, they're going to come up and they're going to tell you something that's not in the Bible. Nah, that is a false prophet. So we have those right now. And so of course they're going to rise up because people are going to be wondering, you're in this 7-year tribulation, and, let's say your mom or dad disappeared because they were saved. They got raptured, and a whole bunch of people disappeared. And things aren't adding up, and then you can't get the answers you want. People have disappeared. Things have shut down. And so, yeah, there's going to be somebody come up and say, I can tell you what's happened. I'm a prophet. And instead of just telling you what's happened is you snooze and you lose. You weren't saved, and neither was I, or I wouldn't be here as a false prophet. Okay, if you're sitting there, then you must not have known much. You must not have been a very good prophet, or you would have left with everybody else at the blessed hope, at the rapture. See, but now you're stuck here too, so now you're going to be all of a sudden be a prophet, and you're really going to tell somebody something. Well, if you want to know what's going to happen, flip open your King James Bible, and it'll tell you. I'm telling you right now. I mean, this is what it says. So many false prophets. No, that's a no wonder. That's a no-brainer there. Okay, so 24:12 says, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Okay, so yeah, you're not going to have a lot of love going around. Again, once the Holy Spirit leaves with all the Christians that got raptured, there ain't going to be any love. So yeah, it's going to be bad. Okay, so now we get on to Matthew 24:13. It says, but he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. Now, this verse right here does not mean endure to the end of your life. Okay, but you that can endure to the end of this period of time, then you'll be saved. So in other words, if you're in this time and you can endure it, okay, and you're saved and you can endure it, then you'll be saved. As far as you're saved is if you believe and you accept Jesus Christ during this time and you endure what you're having to go through, which is probably going to be horrible, then yes, you'll be saved. So this is not a verse to tell a Christian, hey, you need to be good and you need to endure to the end of your life and then you're saved. That is not what that means. So you cannot get that confused with that. Once you're saved and have accepted Jesus Christ into your heart, you're saved. There is no having to try to endure now for the rest of your life, and then at the end of your life, if you didn't do good enough, then you're not saved. That is a works-based religion. That is not what we're talking about here. We are not talking to Christians here. We're talking to people who are in the tribulation, who were unsaved. Now, they may be saved now, but they're unsaved or they wouldn't be here. Okay. So, and it goes on to say, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Okay, you see this right here? It says, and this gospel of the kingdom. Okay, the Christian's gospel, which is in 1 Corinthians, is not a gospel of the kingdom. Okay, this kingdom that they're talking about here is the millennial kingdom, the 1,000-year kingdom where Christ reigns for 1,000 years from Jerusalem, that kingdom. So when you're in this tribulation period, if you're there, the gospel that you're going to be being taught then is not the same gospel as we hear now. See, our gospel is believe in Jesus Christ, admit you're a sinner, go to Jesus Christ, rely on Jesus Christ and the fact that he died, rose again, shed his blood, ascended to heaven. Ask Jesus Christ to forgive you. Ask him to save you, and you can get a free gift, of grace by faith. That's what our gospel is in this dispensation. Okay? When we switch over into Jacob's trouble, that's a different dispensation. And then you're going to have a different gospel being preached. You no longer need to hear the gospel as we hear it now, because that time has passed. You understand? You no longer need to listen or talk about, hey, just believe in Jesus and you can get raptured. That's gone. You missed it. Okay? Now you're here in a new dispensation. And the new gospel that will be being preached is about the gospel of the kingdom to come, which is that 1,000-year millennium. Okay? So now that's what you're looking to. So now you have to believe in Christ. you have to accept it, you have to do good works, and you have to endure to the end to get to that new kingdom. See, and it's going to be tough. So you're better off to accept Christ now and not have to do it. But see, like again, this is the time of Jacob's trouble, which is for the Jews. Jacob is Israel. This is a time for Israel to come back to God. So they're being punished, which is one of the many times they've been punished in the Bible. Okay, let's move on to Matthew 24:15. It says, "When ye therefore see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place," okay, "whoso readeth, let him understand." Okay, so when you read Daniel, okay, basically the abomination of desolation happens in the holy place. The holy place is the new rebuilt temple. Okay, this is another way we can tell this is not for Christians, because the holy place, the temple, is in us. We are the temple now. But in this time, they are going to rebuild the temple. So they're going to start rebuilding this temple basically, roughly, in the beginning of this 7-year period. About halfway through, 3.5 years into this 7 years of Jacob's trouble, basically we're going to have Satan take over the temple, and he is going to desolate it somehow within some type of abomination. And so that's what's going to happen. So right there, we know that's going to happen, and that's when he implements the mark of the beast. And the Bible talks clearly about if you take the mark of the beast, you will burn in hell for it. So he's saying, so the next verse, it says, "Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains." So another reference to this is not Christians, because what would Christians be doing over in Judea? Nothing. So these are for Jews that are in Judea. So basically right here, when this abomination of desolation takes over the Jewish temple, they're going to implement the mark of the beast. It's saying if you're hanging around there, you better get out. Okay, so if you're in Judea, you need to flee into the mountains. And that's when it goes on to say, "Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house." Basically telling you, you're going to get out, and you better get out fast. If you're already to this point, you better have your bags packed. You should have already left. But don't be rummaging through your house thinking, "Hey, where's my purse? Where's my this? Well, where's those pictures I've always wanted to keep?" I mean, you might as well forget it. Okay, you need to hit the road, hit it right now. It says right here, "Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes." So if you're in the field and this happens, hit the road. Just take off running, because if you come back to your house, they're going to get you. They're going to get you, and they're going to kill you. Okay? Because they're after you. They don't want the Jews to come back to begin with. So it goes on in 24:19 and says, "And woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days." So, if you're stuck in this 7-year tribulation period, and you have a child, and they implement the mark of the beast when this abomination of desolation takes over, they're going to want to stamp that on your hand, or in your hand, or in your head, or whatever. And if you don't do it, you're not going to be able to buy or sell. That's what it says. So you and your kid are going to starve to death. Either that, you're going to take the mark, and then you're going to burn in hell for it. So obviously, it's going to be horrible if you've got a child. And then it goes on to say, "But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day." So in other words, this could happen in the dead of winter. We don't know. It could be in the winter, might be in the summer. But it just says, pray that your flight might not be in the winter. Why? Because you're probably going to freeze to death trying to get out of Judea, trying to get up into the mountains to get away from this stuff happening. Obviously, who wants to travel on foot, I'm sure, because you're not going to have a car in the winter. This is neither on the Sabbath day. Well, guess what? Us Christians don't have any Sabbath day. That is not what we do. So, you hear about the Sabbath day, but this Sabbath day has probably been re-implemented during this time. So now you've got a Sabbath day over there in Judea or in Israel. And so, they're telling you, well, pray it's not on the Sabbath day, probably because, you're not supposed to be traveling on the Sabbath day. So they catch you trying to travel and packing and moving stuff, they're going to want to kill you. So let's go on to the next one. So Matthew 24:21, it says, "For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor shall it ever be." So this is where we get the great tribulation. They're saying that the second half of the tribulation is the great tribulation. But just to clear that up, this is not a title, this is a description, okay? So when it says, "Then there shall be great tribulation," it's not saying then is the great tribulation. So this is not the great tribulation. This is the second half of Jacob's trouble, which is great tribulation, but it's not the great tribulation. You see, this is a description of the second half, and it says, "For then shall be great tribulation." So once Satan sets up his little kingdom there, his little mark of the beast in the temple, from that point forward, great tribulation. It's going to be really bad then. They're going to be hunting you down, and if you don't take that mark, they're probably going to cut your head off. So, you're going to have to try to endure this. It's going to be miserable. Okay, so let's go on to the next one here. And it says, so 24:22 says, "And except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened." Okay, so in other words, if this tribulation period, great tribulation, if it went on more than 7 years, nobody would survive. The devil would eventually get you, he'd stick the mark on you, and if not, he would kill you. So for the elect's sake, he's going to end it. Now, because he doesn't care, he's not caring here. If you took the mark, you're no longer the elect, okay? You are going to hell. So he's not ending it for you. Could probably care less. You've already done what you're not supposed to do. You've already signed your own death warrant. So his concern here is the elect. So do not get this elect, like we could say the church today, like me, for example, or anybody that's out there that's saved, we could say, well, I'm part of the elect. Again, this is a different dispensation. You are in the 7-year period here, not now, in the 7-year period. In that 7-year period, you have elect there too. Those are the ones that got saved during that time period. Okay, these are the ones that need to make it to the end to be saved, to that kingdom. They are referred to as the elect here. So for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Otherwise, nobody would survive it. Now, if you're the elect at that point and you get killed, I'm sure you're going to go ahead and make it, because you're going to die as a martyr. So, and it talks about in Revelation, these people who died as martyrs and they're in heaven. So we know you'll still make it, but, if you're still alive at this point, for your sake, God is going to shorten the tribulation so you can go ahead and, because if he didn't, it says no man would make it. Okay, so on to Matthew 24:23. It says, "If any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, here or there is Christ, believe it not." Again, because Christ is going to come down in a fashion that you will not misunderstand it. So Christ is not running around somewhere and you can go talk to him. Okay, just forget it. Matthew 24:24, "For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect." So in other words, you're going to have these false prophets, which are probably demons, probably devils, and the false prophet of Satan running around, and they're going to be showing you signs and wonders. It says, "Insomuch, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect." I think if you're one of the elect and you're saved, it's not going to be possible. That's why it says, if it were possible, they would be able to deceive the elect. Well, I don't believe it's going to be possible. If you're honestly saved in this time, you're going to know what's happening because you're going to heard the gospel, and they're not going to be able to fool you. You're going to know better. But now, if you're not one of the elect, oh yeah, if you're one of the dummies in there that hasn't accepted Christ at this point, they're going to be able to fool you, and you're going to do anything they say, and they're going to trick you into anything. So, you need to keep that in mind. So we go on to 24:25. It says, "Behold, I have told you before." Okay. "Wherefore, if they shall say to you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not." So in other words, he's telling you right here, they're going to claim that Christ is somewhere, and they're going to say, hey, he's in the desert. And so if he tells you that, if one of these guys says, hey, Christ is over there in the desert, don't go, because he's not. If they say, oh, Christ is over here, he's in one of these secret chambers, go over there and check him out. He's not there. Don't go. Don't believe it. You know when Christ is coming back, and he's not hanging out in some room in the back room. He's not showing up on TikTok with pink hair and telling you where to go. Okay? He's got an entrance he's going to make, and there's going to be no mistake about it when he gets here. And you know that because you've been saved in this time period. So you're an elect now. You shouldn't be able to be fooled. But he's telling you, like I've told you before, don't believe it. Just don't believe it. Okay? So, on to 24:27. "For as lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even into the west, so also shall the coming of the Son of Man be." Okay? So, when you see, what he's saying here, as lightning comes from out of the east and shineth to the west. So, you've seen lightning streak across the sky, right? It says, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. So, if you see a huge flash of lightning, okay, you ain't mistaken it. You don't see a huge flash of lightning and light up the whole sky and think that it's your headlights, okay? Or think, oh, did I leave my dome light on? No, you know what it is, okay? So he's saying also shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. So in other words, you ain't going to mistake it. You're not going to mistake it. So don't fall for, hey, Christ is over here in a closet. Go check him out. Christ is back here in this back room. When he comes, you're not going to miss it unless you're a blooming idiot, okay? I don't think you'll miss it even if you are a blooming idiot, but, you'll know better when somebody tells you this, okay? So on it says, "For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together." So, obviously that's just saying, if the shoe fits, wear it. Where something is where it's going to be. So where the carcass is at is the eagle's going to be. So when he comes, you're not going to miss it. You're going to know right where it is. Okay. So now we're going to go on and talk about basically the coming of his coming of Christ, of the Son of Man here. So let's move on to Matthew 24:29. It says, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days, shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken." Okay, so this is when Christ shows up. Okay, immediately after the tribulation of those days, so after the 7-year tribulation, or 7 years of Jacob's trouble, all of a sudden, if it's bright and sunny outside, the sun's going to go dark. Now, if you're on the other side of the world and it's dark and you're looking up at the moon is going to go dark. So in other words, it's going to be pitch black. It doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter if it's night. It doesn't matter if it's day. The sun's going to darken. The moon's going to be darkened. And it says the stars shall fall from heaven. So, on that right there, I've read some things are saying that they're calling the stars different angels, and these angels are going to fall from heaven. Okay, and you're going to see this. And some say that these are actual stars they're going to go out to, and you're not going to see them. Either way, everything's going to go dark. And then it says, "And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of the Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory." So this right here tells you again, this is for the Jews, because the very first thing is, like the Bible says, Jews require a sign. Okay, so, and the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. So they're going to see a sign. And then it says, and then all the tribes of the earth. That's the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, they don't call Gentiles tribes. They don't call Christians tribes of people. The only tribes are the 12 tribes of Israel. So, a sign for the Jews of the Son of Man in heaven. Then shall the tribes of the earth, the 12 tribes of Israel. And, of course, then they're going to see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So they're going to see it. You're going to see him coming down from heaven. Okay, and it says next, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. So I don't know if you're going to hear like do-do-do-do, or if you're going to hear like a bah. I don't know. I always picture a huge sound like a foghorn, just a loud rumbling. Yeah, I just don't know what the sound will be like. But either way, it says, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So right here are those elect. These are the ones that made it through, that didn't get fooled, that didn't take the mark of the beast, people that are still alive. And he sends his angels to gather these people up. So he's gathering the elect up. This is similar to another rapture. Okay? So, and we'll explain that in a minute, but so these people are being gathered up. So they're living all out in the world or wherever they're at, and now the angels are going to go collect them. So that doesn't mean they're going to have to take a bus, okay, or a plane. When these angels come get them, I'm sure it's just about instantaneously, just bang, all of a sudden they're gone. So basically like another type of rapture at the end of Jacob's trouble. Okay, so now we move on, and we're going to talk about the lesson of the fig tree. And now this is the thing I was going to tell you about where we can kind of maybe put some dates together. Not exactly, but kind of get an idea, possibly. So Matthew 24:32 says, now learn a parable of the fig tree. When its branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. Okay, so it says, so likewise ye, when ye see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things been fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. So, what they're saying here is, possibly, now the fig tree all throughout the Bible is an analogy of Israel. So he's saying here that this fig tree is going to put forth leaves. It's like a new, it's coming back alive. It's blossoming. Okay, and he says, this generation shall not pass till these things be fulfilled. Well, when you read through the Bible, and I don't have the verse handy, but it basically tells you that a generation, if you're really strong in your generation, is 80 years. Okay, so anything below that, I think it's 70 or 75 is typically a generation, but if you're good and strong, 80 years. Okay, if you can take this fig tree analogy here, if you will, as it reblooms, when Israel became a nation again was 1948. They were scattered everywhere over the whole earth, and they were brought back to Israel as a nation in 1948. So if you could apply this to that, and let's just say you were born and you're a Jew, and you're born in 1948 when Israel became a nation, and we assume that the strong, let's just go with the high end here, 80 years is a typical generation. If you take 1948 and add 80 years to it, assuming that's what he meant, that's 2028. We're fixing to go into 2024. So, I mean, he says right here, verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Well, which generation is he talking about? So, if you go by that and say, well, let's just say the generation he was talking about is back whenever this fig tree gets tender and putteth forth leaves. Okay, you know that this stuff is going to happen when this happens. Well, this fig tree lesson here, this fig tree is always reverts back to Israel. Well, so it's putting forth leaves and it's starting to bloom again. Well, when did that happen? Well, Israel became a nation in 1948. So, you take 1948. If you were born in 1948, at that time, you would be 80 years old in 2028. So, in other words, even before 1948, there's lots of people that are still alive. So that generation from that time has not passed away yet. So is that the generation he's talking about? Well, you take a look at the stuff that's happening today in our world and compare it to some of this stuff, it has to be. I mean, how could it go on any further? So we take the lesson from the fig tree here. We plug Israel in. We take 80 years. That's 2028. And that says, that's on a good generation. If you actually take what they call a generation is 70 some years, I mean, we're talking, it's knocking at the door. Of course, we don't know that the calendar is 100% correct. And some will say that Israel actually didn't become a nation until 1949. And, there's a year or two either way. Our calendar is supposed to be off. So I don't know. But if you take just the simple math and do this, I come to 2028. We're fixing to go into 2024. Things are getting pretty hairy out there right now. Just turn on the news and listen to the stuff they're doing. They're trying to ban the Bible. They're trying to, it's unbelievable. So it's getting bad. So that could be, maybe the rapture could be between 2024 and 2028. Hey, that'd be great. If it happened in 2024, I'd be satisfied with that. That'd be a wonderful Christmas present to me. So let's go on to the last ones here. Matthew 24:36 says, but, and he's talking about this day and the hour. He says, but of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Okay? Now keep in mind, he knows it now, obviously. If he didn't know it then, he knows it now because he's in heaven on the right hand of the Father now. So, no man knows the date for sure because, obviously, that's why we're guessing here. So he goes on to say, but as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark. Okay, that's what we're doing now. We got lots of guys out there. They're just living their lives, doing whatever they want to do, the same as they were in Noah's day. Okay? So think about this for a second. And verse 39 says, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall the coming of the man... So also shall the coming of the Son of Man be. So think about this for a second. Noah was 400 years old when he got into that ark. He had been preaching about the rain for hundreds of years. They say it probably took 150 years to build the ark. So all these people were living, marrying, buying, selling, doing your normal stuff that everybody's doing right now. And he's preaching, and they don't want to hear it. And by the time it all got said and done, him and his 7 family members, so 8 people got on the ark and survived. Okay, only 8. So this would tell us right here, this tells me anyway, that it says these, as the last days, are also going to be like in Noah's day. Okay, well, in Noah's day, we didn't have millions and billions of people getting saved like people claim are now. We had 8 people get saved. Everybody else in the entire world died. We only had 8. Okay? So, I don't know if Noah wasn't a very good preacher and nobody wanted to listen to him, or, I'm sure they just didn't care. So he was probably a great, righteous, preaching man, and they were just like, whatever. So they didn't believe it until the rain started falling. Okay? Of course, they had never seen rain, and he was telling them about rain, and they didn't want to hear it. So, okay, that's kind of like us today as Christians. I would tell you, hey, about the rapture. Well, we've never seen the rapture. There's nothing like that, so they don't believe it. It's like, well, the Bible says the rapture. He told them to flood. They didn't believe it. You don't believe it. We'll see what happens. So let's move on to the next verse, and this is an interesting verse here. Matthew 24:40 says, and then shall 2 be in the field, and one shall be taken and the other left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, and the one shall be taken and the other left. Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come. So a lot of people, I've heard pastors teach this before, this one, and they teach this as a rapture passage. They're like, see, then shall 2 be in the field, and one shall be taken, the other left. That's the rapture. That's a Christian at the rapture. No, it's not. We're still talking about the Jacob's trouble, we're talking about, what we're talking about here is when these angels come back to collect the elect from the four winds. These people are the elect. These people are living during the tribulation, okay? They're out there with the people who are not saved, who they probably took the mark of the beast, okay, some of these people. And now you've got somebody that is saved. They did not take the mark of the beast. They've endured to the end, and now the angels coming and collecting them, okay? They're being collected, and it's telling you here that, hey, two will be in the field, one will be taken, one will be left. The one that's taken is one of the elect that's being taken and is going to get to go into the new kingdom, the millennium. The other, the one that's left, well, they're ones that either took the mark of the beast or whatever. Either way, they're not saved, and they're left because they're fixing to be sent to hell. Because when Christ comes back and he gathers his elect, that's when he goes and starts killing the people that rejected him. All these people are getting killed. Okay, it talks about the blood, not in this particular thing here, but other places in the Bible it talks about the blood, being the height or the depth of a horse's bridle. So everybody that's left that didn't want to accept Christ, they don't get to live happily ever after. They don't get to go into the millennial kingdom. Okay, they get killed and sent to hell. So think about that. So these people here this is not a rapture verse, like as in rapture pre-tribulation. This is a rapture, if you will. It's a gathering of the elect during the 7-year period of Jacob's trouble at the end when Christ returns. See, he's already returned here, and he's got his angels out gathering up his elect. So we keep on reading, and it says, "But know this, that if the goodman of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched, and would not have suffered his house to be broken up." Okay, that's a no-brainer. Duh. In other words, if you'd have known there was a thief going to come, you'd have been waiting for him, right? Well, if you'd have known Christ was going to come, you would have got right, and you'd have got right, and so Christ would be able to pick you up. But instead, you didn't want to hear it, you didn't pay attention, so you're not ready, you didn't get saved, you're toast. Okay, that's basically it. Okay, so it says, "Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not the Son of Man cometh." So in other words, it's like, well, I don't think it's going to be here. This is for these people that are like, whatever, it could be today, could be tomorrow, could be a year from now, we don't know, so I'm not going to do anything. And about the time you think it's not going to happen, boom, it happens, and it's too late, you're toast. Okay, so in other words, you need to get ready. You need to be ready and waiting, because you don't know when it's going to happen. You see, of course, now if you're living in that tribulation time, that's what it's talking about here. You're living in that tribulation time, obviously. I mean, it wouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure out this thing is going to be roughly 7 years long, because that's what the Bible tells you. It's not telling you the time and date it's going to end, but it's going to be roughly 7 years. But, I mean, come on now. You need to be ready. And, of course, this applies to Christians today who are waiting on the actual pre-tribulation, pre-Jacob's trouble, rapture, is you need to be ready. Don't wait. Get saved now before it's too late. Okay? So let's go on here. Okay, it says, "Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household, to give them meat in due season?" It goes on to say, "Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing." So obviously, if you're doing the Lord's work and he comes, you're blessed. Okay. "Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods." Okay. And that if that evil servant shall say in his heart, "My Lord delayeth his coming," and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So all that's telling you right there is you need to be waiting. You need to be ready and waiting. Because if you're not, and you doing whatever you want to be doing, and you're, eating and drinking with the drunks, and you're smiting people because you think, I've got plenty of time, and boom, the Lord shows up in an hour that you're not aware of, he is going to cut you asunder, and you will be appointed with the people who are going to hell, with the hypocrites. Okay, you will not get to be collected up with the elect. You will not get to see the millennium kingdom. You will be in hell for 1,000 years. Now, you will get another judgment, the white throne judgment, after the 1,000 years, but obviously that's not going to do you any good. I mean, your judgment's going to put you back into the lake of fire. You're basically going out of the frying pan, hell, into the fire. You're going from hell into the lake of fire, because once you get to that white throne judgment, you're basically getting your judgment, because here it's kind of one of those things. You die, you go straight to hell. You don't get any judgment per se, because you didn't accept Christ. You go straight to hell. You get into this tribulation period time. You don't accept Christ. You die. You go to hell. You make it all the way through tribulation. You took your mark of the beast. You go to hell. Okay, you make it all the way through. You didn't take the mark of the beast, but somehow you survived it because you're a survivalist, but you still wanted to have nothing to do with God. At the end of this, he collects his elect. Everybody else gets killed, goes to hell. Okay, so it's like, well, hey, that's not fair. I didn't get judged. I just went straight to hell. Well, don't worry. After the 1,000-year millennium, you're going to be resurrected, put in your body, and you're going to get to stand before God, and you're going to get judged on your works. Now, we know your works is not any good. We know that your righteousness are like filthy rags, so that ain't any good. And you never accepted Christ, and that's the criteria for this whole thing. So guess what? You're going to be picked out of hell, you're going to be judged, and thrown into the lake of fire. So that's kind of the whole, line of events here. So anyway, I'm banking or hoping that based on our current events and the stuff that's happening with Israel and with the world and the stuff they're trying to do, and they're trying to, of course, Christians are going to have to face tribulation. We knew that. Christians, some Christians in different parts of the world are being killed right now. So Christians go through tribulation. Now, here where I'm at in America, we don't really go through hardly any tribulation. I mean, yeah, we're getting stuff banned and, all that kind of stuff, but we're not getting drug out into the streets and shot. Okay, so, but some Christians face tribulations, but this is nothing like Jacob's trouble. This is nothing like, great tribulation in 7 years of Jacob's trouble. Nothing like it, not even remotely. So anyway, I'm hoping that we take 1948, we add about 80 years, that's 2028. To me, if we could get out of here in 2028, I think by the time 2028 gets here, we're going to be in some sad shape. We're already in sad shape. I mean, we're being punished for the fact that America is no longer a Christian nation. I mean, we're a nation of heathens. Everything we do with Hollywood and the sex stuff and the demonic and Luciferians and all of our, probably all of our politicians are nothing but Luciferians. All they're doing is running this place into the ground for money, I guess. I don't know exactly all their reasons behind it, but they want to depopulate. They want eugenics. They want you dead. They're making it clear. They're not even really hiding it anymore. So, eventually it has to come to a head. So if we can plug in the lesson of the fig tree here in Matthew 24, get that lined up with 1948, add about 80 years, 2028, I can live with that. I could live with 2028. I pray that it is 2028. I pray that it's sooner. But like I said, no man knows for sure when the rapture is going to happen either, but we can kind of see the signs of the times. We're not idiots. We can see that. We can see what it's coming to. And it, of course, that's my opinion. I can't prove it. I can't prove that time or date, but look into it. Look at that lesson of the fig tree. Look into, Fort Antonia over there where they're the temple. They're not even wailing wall. They're not even at the temple, but they're lost. They're completely lost and they're evil. And that is what the purpose of Jacob's trouble is for, is to bring those Jews back to Christ, and then for them to realize, we made a mistake, get them saved, and so he can come back down and take over, and the kingdom will be, of course, in Israel. That's where his throne is going to be. So he's going to be ruling and reigning the earth right over there from Israel. So Israel's not going anywhere, okay? It's not happening. So don't worry about no Israeli war and somebody, knocking Israel off the map. It ain't happening. Okay, it's not happening. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little podcast. And I hope you have a Merry Christmas. Today, at the recording of this, is the 22nd, so Christmas is just a few days away. And I want to thank you for listening. I pray that this helps you, and I pray that you send it on to somebody and it'll help them. I hope that you have good holidays, Merry Christmas. Remember what Christmas is all about. We're supposed to be celebrating Christ here. Probably not really. He probably really wasn't born in December, but that's irrelevant. So we are celebrating Christ's birth. And just remember, Christ is no longer a baby in a manger. Christ is on the right hand, on the throne up there. He's a grown man, okay? He's in a grown man's body, and he is our Savior, and he is going to come back at this time in Armageddon, and he's going to clean house. So he's not a sweet little baby anymore, okay? He's a grown man, and when he comes back, you better watch out. If you're not saved, you're in trouble, okay? You are in trouble. But thanks for listening. God bless you. Have a Merry Christmas. Have a Happy New Year. Whole 9 yards. Don't drink. Don't drive. Get saved if you're not already. And if you want a really good Christmas present, get yourself a King James Bible. And I'm going to have some more podcasts on that King James Bible stuff. But these other versions are demonic, satanic perversions. And you can prove it. Okay? It can be proven. They are demonic, satanic. That's what they are. So, anyway, get yourself a King James Bible. Splurge on yourself. Get your family a King James Bible. And give us an email. Any questions, comments at truthseekers2012@gmail.com. And also go to our website, kennywilliamson.com. God bless you.